Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
You're standing in your kitchen, watching your grandchildren laugh in the next room. The afternoon light is coming through the window just right. Your daughter is here. Everyone is healthy. And instead of simply being in that moment, instead of letting it fill you all the way up, something tightens in your chest. A whisper. A shadow that passes across the warmth. What if this doesn't last? And you pull back. Just slightly. Just enough to protect yourself from how much you love this. Because somewhere along the way, you learn that joy has a cost. That the fuller your heart gets, the more there is to lose. If you recognized yourself just now, if that quiet bracing, that involuntary emotional flinching, felt familiar, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not ungrateful. You are not anxious in the clinical sense, though the feeling wears anxiety's clothes. What you're carrying has a name. Brené Brown called it foreboding joy, and the moment I first heard those two words placed together, I felt something shift in my ribcage. Because I had been doing it for years without knowing I was doing it. Most of us have. Especially those of us who have loved deeply and lost something. Who have been blindsided before. Who have learned, through experience, not paranoia, that life can change on a Tuesday afternoon for no reason at all. Foreboding joy is the practice of dressing a wound that hasn't happened yet. It's the way you can be sitting in the most beautiful chapter of your life and still feel like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's the midnight thought that follows a perfect evening. It's the don't get too excited that lives just beneath your enthusiasm. It's what happens when joy starts to feel dangerous, when happiness becomes a vulnerability rather than a gift. And here's what I need you to hear, not as a therapist talking to a patient, but as one woman talking to another. This is not the same thing as pessimism. People who struggle with foreboding joy are not negative thinkers. They are often some of the most deeply feeling, most perceptive people in any room. They notice beauty sharply. They love fiercely. They are just also very, very good at bracing. The bracing starts young for many of us. Some of us grew up in homes where joy was followed by volatility, where a good day could turn without warning. Some of us lost someone so unexpectedly that we rewired ourselves against surprise. Some of us were taught, subtly or not, so subtly, that wanting things too much was a kind of arrogance. That hoping too loudly was asking for disappointment. And so we learned to hold our joy at arm's length. To love with one foot pointed toward the exit. To half live our happiest moments because fully living them felt too risky. There's a particular cruelty in this pattern, isn't there? The very moments that were meant to be sanctuaries, a child's milestone, a quiet Sunday, a health scare that turned out fine, become instead the triggering points for our deepest anxiety. The better it gets, the more we brace. I want to sit with that for a moment, because I don't think we give ourselves enough compassion for how exhausting it is to live this way. To always be scanning the horizon. To be unable to simply receive a good thing without immediately calculating what losing it would cost you. Your nervous system has been trying to protect you. That's the unspoken truth here. The bracing isn't weakness. It's not ingratitude. It's the work of a heart that has been through something, or that has watched the people it loves go through something and decided, unconsciously, automatically, that partial presence is safer than full exposure. But here's the thing about partial presence. It doesn't actually protect you from loss. If something you love is taken from you, the fact that you braced against it beforehand doesn't make the grief smaller. It just makes the joy smaller, while everything's still okay. You miss the moment twice. Once when it's happening, because you couldn't fully inhabit it. And again when it's gone. That's the quiet tragedy of foreboding joy. And that's exactly why we need to talk about it. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with it. Can you remember the last time something genuinely wonderful happened? A phone call with good news, a moment of real connection, a morning where everything felt right, and your very first instinct wasn't gratitude, but calculation? How long will this last? Who's going to need something from me? What am I not seeing? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and you're not imagining it. That mental pivot from receiving joy to auditing it happens so fast in some of us that we've stopped noticing we're doing it. It's become as automatic as breathing, as quiet as a habit we no longer remember forming. So let's talk about where it comes from. Because this pattern doesn't arrive from nowhere. It has roots, and roots, even painful ones, make a lot more sense when you can finally see them. For many women in our generation, joy was conditional growing up, not because our parents were cruel, often quite the opposite, but because the world we were raised in handed us a very specific set of unspoken rules. Don't want too much. Don't shine too brightly. Don't count your chickens. Don't get your hopes up. These weren't malicious lessons. They were protective ones, passed down from mothers who had their own hearts broken by wanting. Grandmothers who lived through genuine scarcity, who knew in a bone-deep way that life could be taken without warning. They were trying to prepare us. They just didn't realize that somewhere in the preparing, they also taught us to be afraid of our own happiness, and then life added its own curriculum. Some of us lost a parent too soon. Some of us walked through a marriage that unraveled when we thought it was solid. A health diagnosis. A friendship that ended in a way we still don't fully understand. A dream we built carefully over years that simply didn't happen. These experiences are not nothing. They are weight. They are the kind of thing that teaches your nervous system quietly and thoroughly that joy has a shadow side. The technical term for this in psychological circles is defensive pessimism. The way we use low expectations as emotional armor. But I want to name what it actually feels like, because the clinical language doesn't quite capture it. It feels like standing at the edge of a warm, lit room and choosing to watch through the window instead of walking inside. You can see the warmth. You want it. But something in you says, if you don't go in all the way, it won't hurt as much when they close the curtains. That's the bargain we make. And for a long time, it feels like wisdom. Here's what it actually costs us. The research on this, and I've spent a long time sitting with it, is quietly devastating. When we preemptively dampen our joy, we don't actually reduce our capacity for grief when loss comes. Pain doesn't get smaller because we prepared for it. What does get smaller is our capacity for genuine presence, for delight, for the kind of full-bodied, soul-level gratitude that makes a life feel like it meant something. And there's something else. Something we don't talk about nearly enough. Foreboding joy doesn't just steal your happiness in the moment. It steals your memory of the moment. Think about that. When you're only half present during a beautiful experience, when part of your mind is already doing the grief math, already preparing the exit, you don't lay down the same quality of memory. The moment doesn't sink in the way it should. And so when you look back, the photo album of your life feels a little thin, a little muted. Not because beautiful things didn't happen, they did. But because you were only partially there for them. You watched through the window when you could have been inside. That loss, the loss of your own lived experience, is not something grief counselors talk about enough. We talk about processing pain. We don't talk nearly as much about the accumulated cost of muted joy. Of all the ordinary Tuesday afternoons that were actually extraordinary, but we held at arm's length because we were too busy bracing. I want to be direct with you about something, because you deserve directness. This pattern gets more pronounced as we age. I know that might be hard to hear. But there's a reason why so many women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s find themselves increasingly unable to just rest in a good moment. It's not that life has gotten harder, necessarily. It's that by this stage, we have more evidence, more proof that things end, more losses filed in the archive, more reasons, statistically speaking, for the nervous system to say, don't get too comfortable. And our culture doesn't help. We live in a world that tells women our age to be grateful quietly, to want less, to prepare for diminishment. We absorb messages from media, from medicine, from sometimes even our own families, that our best chapters are behind us. And when you already struggle to fully inhabit joy, and then the world suggests there's less joy coming, the protective bracing can become a wall, not a shelter, a wall. And I think somewhere in the part of you that picked up this conversation today, the part that recognized itself in that kitchen doorway, watching the grandchildren laugh, somewhere in there, you already know the difference. You know what it feels like to be sheltered by your own caution. And you know what it feels like to be imprisoned by it. That knowing matters. It's the beginning of everything. Because the truth, and this is the truth I want to build the rest of our conversation on, is that you cannot selectively numb joy without also numbing grief. You cannot protect yourself from the depth of loss without also flattening the height of love. The same emotional channels that carry heartbreak also carry wonder. They are not separate systems. You cannot close one without closing both. Which means that the wall you built to keep the pain out, it's also keeping the light out, and you've been standing in a slightly dimmer version of your own life for long enough. So here we are. You understand the pattern now. You can see its roots, trace its logic, feel the quiet cost of it in your chest. And if you're anything like me, like most women who reach this particular moment of recognition, there's a part of you that wants me to hand you a list. 5 steps, 7 habits, a clean, laminated set of instructions for how to stop doing the thing you've been doing for decades. I'm not going to do that. Not because the tools don't exist, they do, and we'll get to them. But because I've learned, slowly, and with some resistance, that foreboding joy doesn't yield to a checklist. It yields to something quieter. Something that requires a different kind of courage than the kind we usually celebrate. It requires the courage to be seen by your own life. Let me explain what I mean by that. Most of us are extraordinarily skilled at being present for other people's experiences. We show up, we witness, we hold space. We are the ones in the room who notice when someone is struggling, who remember the details, who make sure everyone else feels fully received. We are magnificent at that. What we are far less practiced at is turning that same quality of attention toward ourselves, toward our own moments, our own joy, letting our own life land on us the way we let other people's lives land on us. Being seen by your own life means standing in that kitchen doorway, and instead of cataloging what could go wrong, you let yourself register what is going right. Not as a defense against grief, not as a gratitude exercise you read about in a magazine, but as a genuine, deliberate act of witness. I am here. This is happening. I am letting this matter. That's it. That's the whole turning. I know it sounds almost insultingly simple, but I want you to try it. Really try it. The next time you catch yourself bracing in a beautiful moment. Not after the moment is over. Not in retrospect. Right in the middle of it, when the tightening starts in your chest, when the shadow passes over the warmth. Instead of following the shadow, you pause. You put your feet flat on the floor. You look at whatever is in front of you. The grandchildren, the afternoon light, the person you love sitting across the table. And you say internally, with every bit of intention you can gather, I am not going to borrow trouble from a future that hasn't arrived. I am going to be here in this right now. That's not toxic positivity. It's not pretending that loss isn't real or that life isn't fragile. It's actually the opposite of pretending. It's the most honest thing you can do, because the present moment is real. The joy in front of you is real. The future loss you're rehearsing, that's the fiction. That's the story you're choosing over the actual living, breathing gift that's right in front of you. Now, I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough in conversations like this one. The turning isn't a single moment. It's not a decision you make once and then you're healed. Foreboding joy is a deeply grooved pattern, neural pathways laid down over years, sometimes decades. You are not going to rewire it in an afternoon, and you shouldn't expect to. What you can do is begin to catch it, and then catch it again, and then again. There's a phrase I come back to again and again when I'm working through something old and stubborn in myself. Noticing is not the same as changing, but it is the beginning of it. Every time you notice yourself standing at the window instead of walking through the door, and you choose, even imperfectly, even briefly, to step inside, you are laying down a different kind of groove. A different story about what you're capable of, about what you deserve. And here's what I know about women our age that I want to say clearly, because I don't think we hear it enough. We are not too set in our ways to change this. The research on neuroplasticity, on the brain's genuine capacity to form new patterns, is far more hopeful than the cultural narrative we've been handed about aging. The brain you have right now, at whatever age you're reading this, is still responsive, still capable of learning, still capable of being surprised by its own capacity for joy. What works against us isn't biology. It's the story we've been told and have started to tell ourselves, that who we are now is who we will always be, that the patterns we've built are permanent, that the wall is structural. It isn't. It's habitual. And habits, even very old ones, have a weakness. They require your unconscious cooperation. The moment you bring them into the light, the moment you say, I see what you're doing, and I'm making a different choice, you have already begun to dismantle them. So let's talk about what that different choice looks like practically in the texture of ordinary days. The first thing, and this is both the simplest and the hardest, is to practice what I call full reception. When something good happens, let it land. Don't immediately pivot to what comes next, what could go wrong, what you need to do to protect it. Just receive it fully, like a letter you've been waiting for, that you actually let yourself read all the way to the end instead of skimming for the bad news. This might mean physically pausing, putting your phone down, sitting with the warmth for 30 extra seconds before your brain pulls you somewhere else. It sounds small. It is revolutionary. The second thing is to start noticing your shadow thoughts, the automatic worry that follows joy, without treating them as prophecy. These thoughts are not insight. They are not wisdom. They are habit wearing wisdom's clothing. When the thought comes, don't get too comfortable. This won't last. Something will go wrong. You don't need to argue with it. You don't need to suppress it. You just need to see it clearly for what it is. An old reflex, not a truth. You can even say gently, the way you'd speak to someone you love who is catastrophizing, I hear you. And we're staying here anyway. The third thing, and this one surprised me when I first encountered it, is to actively cultivate what researchers call savoring. Not just experiencing a good moment, but deliberately deepening your attention to it, noticing the specific details, the quality of the light, the particular sound of that laugh, the exact feeling of warmth in your hands around the mug. When you bring that level of specificity to joy, something remarkable happens. You stop experiencing it as a vague, fragile thing that could be taken. You start experiencing it as real, as textured and particular, and undeniably here. And it becomes much harder for the foreboding to take hold, because the present moment is no longer abstract. It's concrete. It's specific. It's yours. There is one more thing I want to say about the turning, and it's the most tender part. For some of us, fully opening to joy will surface grief. Old grief. Grief we didn't know was still sitting there, waiting. Because the same channels remember, the ones we closed to protect ourselves. They've been holding something. If that happens, if you practice being present in a beautiful moment and find yourself unexpectedly weeping, or feeling a longing you can't quite name, please don't interpret that as evidence that this doesn't work. Interpret it as evidence that it does, that you are thawing. That feeling is returning to parts of you that went quiet for self-protection. That's not a crisis. That's a homecoming. I want to start this final part with something that might catch you off guard. You don't have to earn the right to joy. I know that sounds simple. I know you might even nod at it the way we nod at things we've heard before, things that sound right, but don't quite reach the place they need to reach. So I'm going to say it again differently because I think it's the sentence this entire conversation has been quietly building toward. The joy that is available to you right now, in your life as it actually is, with all its complexity and grief and beautiful ordinary detail, does not require you to have handled everything perfectly. It does not require you to have grieved correctly or healed completely or resolved the unresolved things. It does not require you to be further along than you are. It's available now, as you are, in this moment. That's not a consolation prize. That's the whole point. Here's what I've come to understand after years of sitting with this, both in my own life and in conversations with women who are wrestling with the same quiet weight you've been carrying. Integration isn't a destination. It's not a state you arrive at where foreboding joy no longer visits you. It will visit. The shadow will still pass over the warmth sometimes, especially in the moments that matter most, especially when the people you love are right there in front of you and your heart is so full it almost hurts. Integration means that when it visits, you know what it is, you know it by name, you see it clearly, and you have, somewhere inside you now, a different response available, one that wasn't there before. Not a perfect response, not an immediate one, but a real one. I see you, and I'm choosing the moment anyway. That's integration. That small, repeated, courageous choice. I want to talk about what this looks like in the specific shape of a life like yours. Because I think too much of what gets written about emotional healing is written for a kind of abstract, universal person who doesn't actually exist. You exist, specifically, with a specific history, specific losses, specific loves, specific fears. So let me speak to that specificity. At this stage of life, and I say this not as a diminishment, but as a genuine recognition of where you are likely holding more than you let on. You may be navigating the complicated love of watching your children become fully formed adults with lives you can't control and don't always understand. You may be sitting with a marriage that has deepened into something quieter than it used to be, or that has ended, or that you're tending carefully through its own changes. You may have lost friends, parents, the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now. You are carrying the weight we carry, the particular weight of a life that has been lived, not imagined, not planned, but actually messily, beautifully lived. And here is what I want you to hear about that weight. It is not evidence that joy is behind you. It is evidence that you are capable of depth. The same capacity that lets you grieve so fully is the one that lets you love so fully. They are the same river. And you have spent too long standing on the bank. There is a particular gift that comes with this season of life that younger people simply don't have access to. And I don't think we claim it nearly enough. It is the gift of knowing what matters, not intellectually, not theoretically, in the bones. You have lived long enough to know, really know, that time is not an abstraction, that the people in front of you are not guaranteed, that ordinary Tuesdays are frequently where the real life happens. That knowledge, the hard-won kind, is not a burden. It is a superpower. If you let it move you toward presence instead of away from it. Because here's the choice that knowledge puts in front of you every single day. You can let the awareness of impermanence be the thing that keeps you at the window. Or you can let it be the thing that finally, fully walks you through the door. Both responses come from the same true understanding that life is precious and finite and not guaranteed. The difference is only in the direction you move. And that direction, that choice, is available to you every morning you wake up. Every time your phone rings and it's someone you love. Every time the light comes through the window at just the right angle and something in you recognizes it as beautiful. In those moments, you get to choose. I want to give you something to carry forward from this conversation. Not a checklist. I promised I wouldn't do that. But something more like a quiet whisper you can return to. When the foreboding comes, and it will, and you feel yourself beginning to brace, beginning to calculate, beginning to love from behind glass, ask yourself this single question. What would it mean to be here for this? Not what could go wrong, not what you might lose, not how long it will last. Just what would it mean to actually be here? In this kitchen, at this table, in this afternoon, with these people. In this body that has carried you through everything it has carried you through. What would it mean to receive this? And then, and this is the practice, this is the whole of it, you try. Imperfectly. Incompletely. With the shadow still present in your peripheral vision, because that's honest, and we are done pretending that the shadow doesn't exist. You try to be here anyway. Not instead of the grief, alongside it. Not instead of the awareness that things end. With that awareness, held gently, like the wise and hard, one thing it is, while you still choose to be present for what is here. That's not naivety. That's not pretending life isn't fragile. That is, I would argue, the most radical and courageous thing a person who has lived and loved and lost can do. To know what you know, to have felt what you felt, to carry what you carry, and still to let yourself be moved by the afternoon light. To let the laughter of your grandchildren land all the way in your chest instead of stopping at your ribs. To sit across from someone you love and let the fullness of that love be present in your body, in the room, in the moment, without immediately reaching for the antidote. That is not something you have to learn from scratch. It is something you are remembering. Something that was always yours before the world taught you to be careful with it. You have been careful long enough. The door is open. The room is warm. The people you love are on the other side of the threshold. And you, with everything you know, everything you've survived, everything you've become, you are allowed to walk all the way in, not halfway. Not with one foot still outside, all the way in. That's the whole invitation. That's what foreboding joy, when you finally see it clearly, is asking you to reclaim. Not recklessness, not the absence of grief, just your own full presence in your own full life. You've earned it, and even that framing, earned it, is one last thing I want to gently set down. Right here at the end. You haven't earned it, you simply have it. You always did.